At 84 years old, one of music's greatest legends has said his final goodbye to the stage, ending a 50-year career that touched millions of hearts around the world. Neil Diamond's battle with Parkinson's disease forced him to make the most difficult decision of his life, but what he did next showed the world what true courage looks like. You're going to discover how this Brooklyn-born singer went from writing songs in a tiny office to becoming one of the best-selling artists of all time. How Parkinson's disease slowly took away his ability to perform the way he demanded of himself, and why his journey with this devastating illness has inspired countless people facing their own health battles. Stay until the end, because this isn't just a story about retirement, it's a story about accepting limitations with grace, finding peace in the midst of struggle, and proving that sometimes saying goodbye is the bravest thing you can do. Brooklyn, New York, January 24th, 1941. Neil Leslie Diamond was born into a Jewish family during a time when America was on the brink of entering World War II. His parents, Rose and Akiba Diamond, were working-class people who instilled in their son a strong work ethic and a love for music that would shape his entire life. Young Neil grew up in a modest household where money was tight, but love was abundant. His father worked multiple jobs to keep the family afloat, and his mother managed the home with the kind of strength that only mothers from that generation possessed. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and they had music. Neil's first exposure to music came from his parents' record collection and from the radio that played constantly in their small apartment. He was drawn to the melodies, to the way words and music combined to create something that could make you feel things you didn't even know you were capable of feeling. By the time he was 16, Neil had received his first guitar, a gift that would change the trajectory of his entire life. He taught himself to play by listening to records and figuring out the chords by ear. There were no YouTube tutorials, no online lessons, just a teenager, a guitar, and an unshakable determination to make music. While attending Erasmus Hall High School in Brooklyn, Neil was in the same class as Barbra Streisand, another future legend who would go on to shape American music. Even then, there was something special about both of them, a hunger, a drive, a refusal to accept ordinary lives. After high school, Neil briefly attended New York University on a fencing scholarship. Yes, the man who would become famous for Sweet Caroline was actually a talented fencer. But music kept calling to him, and in his senior year, just months before graduation, he made a decision that horrified his parents. He dropped out of college to pursue songwriting full-time. It was 1962, and Neil Diamond was 21 years old, with no degree, no connections in the music industry, and no guarantee that his gamble would pay off. His parents were devastated. They had worked so hard to give him opportunities they never had, and he was throwing away a university education for a dream that seemed impossibly out of reach. But Neil knew. Deep in his soul, he knew that music was his calling, his purpose, his destiny. He took a job at Sunbeam Music Publishing for $50 a week, working in a tiny cubicle called the Brill Building, where he would write songs day after day, trying to create something that would catch someone's attention. The first few years were brutal. Neil wrote hundreds of songs that went nowhere. He faced rejection after rejection, heard no more times than he could count, and there were many nights when he questioned his decision to leave university. But he kept writing. He kept believing, and finally, in 1965, his persistence paid off. A song he wrote called Sunday and Me was recorded by Jay and the Americans and became a hit. Then came I'm a Believer, which he wrote for the Monkees, and that song exploded, becoming one of the biggest hits of 1966 and selling over 10 million copies. Suddenly, Neil Diamond wasn't just a struggling songwriter anymore. He was someone the industry was paying attention to. But Neil didn't want to just write songs for other people. He wanted to perform them himself. He wanted to connect directly with audiences, to stand on a stage and share his music in his own voice. In 1966, Neil released his first solo single, Solitary Man, and it reached the top 10 on the charts. Then came Cherry Cherry, then Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, and the hits kept coming. By 1969, Neil Diamond was a bona fide star with his own unique style. He wasn't rock and roll exactly, wasn't quite pop, wasn't folk or country. He was Neil Diamond, a category unto himself, and audiences loved him for it. Sweet Caroline was released in 1969 and became the song that would define his career. Written as a tribute to Caroline Kennedy, President Kennedy's daughter, the song became an anthem that people sang at weddings, at sporting events, at celebrations of all kinds. Even today, more than 50 years later, when Sweet Caroline plays, people of all ages know every word and sing along with pure joy. The 1970s were Neil's golden decade. He released hit after hit, Cracklin' Rosie, Song Sung Blue, I Said, Holly Holy, Play Me. Each song showcasing his incredible ability to write melodies that stuck in your head and lyrics that touched your heart. He wasn't just a performer, he was a storyteller, using music to share universal emotions that everyone could relate to: love, loss, loneliness, hope, joy, and everything in between. His concerts became legendary events. Neil Diamond shows weren't just concerts, they were experiences. He would perform for 3 hours straight, pouring every ounce of energy into his performances, connecting with audiences in ways that few artists could match. People who attended Neil Diamond concerts would say it was one of the best shows they'd ever seen. And they weren't just talking about the music. They were talking about the connection, the emotion, the feeling that Neil was singing directly to them. In 1980, Neil starred in a remake of The Jazz Singer, playing a Jewish cantor's son who wants to become a pop singer. The film itself received mixed reviews, but the soundtrack was phenomenal, featuring hits like Love on the Rocks and America, songs that would become staples of Neil's repertoire for decades to come. America, in particular, resonated deeply with audiences. It was a song about immigrants coming to the United States seeking a better life, and it captured the hope and determination of generations of people who had made that journey. The song became an unofficial anthem, played at citizenship ceremonies and patriotic celebrations across the country. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Neil continued to tour relentlessly. While many artists from his era were slowing down, Neil seemed to have boundless energy. He would perform over 100 shows a year, traveling the world, selling out arenas and stadiums, and giving audiences the kind of performances that created lifelong memories. In 2011, at the age of 70, Neil Diamond was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a recognition that was long overdue for someone who had contributed so much to popular music. The ceremony was emotional, with tributes from fellow artists who spoke about Neil's influence on their own careers and his impact on music as a whole. By 2017, Neil Diamond had been performing for over 50 years. He was 76 years old and showing no signs of slowing down. He announced a 50th anniversary tour, planning to celebrate half a century of bringing his music to the world. The tour was ambitious, with dates scheduled across North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Fans everywhere were excited to see this legend perform one more time. The tour began in April 2017 and was a massive success. Show after show sold out, and audiences gave Neil standing ovations that lasted for minutes. He was still commanding the stage with the energy and charisma that had made him famous, still hitting the notes that people had been singing along to for decades. But something was wrong. Neil knew it, even if nobody else could see it yet. He was experiencing symptoms that concerned him. His movements weren't as fluid as they used to be. His balance felt off. Simple things that had always been automatic Walking across the stage, picking up his guitar, even holding the microphone, started requiring conscious effort. At first, he thought it was just age catching up with him. He was 76 years old, after all. It would be natural for things to get harder as you get older, but the symptoms were getting worse, not better, and Neil knew he needed to see a doctor. The diagnosis came in late 2017, and it was devastating. Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurological disorder that affects movement, coordination, and balance. There's no cure. There's no way to stop it. You can manage the symptoms with medication and therapy, but the disease will continue to progress, slowly taking away more and more of your physical abilities. For someone whose entire identity was built around performing, around moving across a stage and connecting with audiences through dynamic performances, this diagnosis was particularly cruel. Parkinson's would eventually make it impossible for Neil to do the thing he loved most in the world. Neil tried to continue the tour. He had shows scheduled through October 2017 in Europe, and he was determined to fulfill those commitments. But with each show, it became harder. The symptoms were progressing faster than he expected. By the time the European leg of the tour ended in mid-October, Neil knew he was fighting a losing battle. On January 22nd, 2018, just 2 days before his 77th birthday, Neil Diamond made an announcement that broke the hearts of millions of fans around the world. He was retiring from concert touring due to his Parkinson's disease diagnosis. The statement he released was heartbreaking in its honesty and grace. "It is with great reluctance and disappointment that I announce my retirement from concert touring. I have been so honored to bring my shows to the public for the past 50 years, CBS Sports Diamond said. My sincerest apologies to everyone who purchased tickets and were planning to come to the upcoming shows." CBS Sports. He also added that he planned to remain active in writing, recording and other projects for a long time to come. CBS Sports. The response from fans was immediate and overwhelming. Social media was flooded with messages of support, with people sharing memories of Neil Diamond concerts they had attended, songs that had been important in their lives, and expressions of gratitude for the 50 years of music he had given them. The entertainment world also responded with tributes and messages of support. Fellow musicians who had been influenced by Neil's work expressed their admiration for how he handled this devastating news with such dignity and honesty. Just days after the announcement, on January 28, 2018, the Recording Academy honored Neil Diamond with a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammy Awards. It was a bittersweet moment. Here was one of music's greatest legends being celebrated for his incredible career, but everyone knew that his ability to share that music through live performance had come to an end. The months and years following the announcement were difficult for Neil. Diamond admitted he spent the 2 years after his doctor informed him of his diagnosis in complete denial. Sports Illustrated. He couldn't accept that his performing career was over, that the thing that had defined his entire adult life was being taken away from him. Depression is common among people diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. The knowledge that your body will progressively lose function, that things will keep getting harder, and that there's no cure is incredibly difficult to process. Many people withdraw, isolate themselves, and struggle to find meaning in their changed circumstances. But Neil slowly began to find a different path forward. Instead of focusing on what he had lost, he started to focus on what he still had. He could still write music. He could still record in the studio where conditions were controlled, and he could take as many takes as needed. He could still connect with his fans in other ways. And most importantly, he was still alive, still able to be with his family, still able to experience the world, even if it was different from how he had experienced it before. In 2022, something remarkable happened. A Broadway musical about Neil Diamond's life called A Beautiful Noise, the Neil Diamond Musical, premiered in New York. The show told the story of Neil's journey from Brooklyn to superstardom, featuring all of his greatest hits performed by a talented cast. Neil attended the opening night, and the response was overwhelming. The musical was a hit, running for over 2 years on Broadway and touring to other cities. The producing team behind the show raised $750,000 for Parkinson's disease research and awareness. World Boxing News, turning Neil's diagnosis into an opportunity to help others facing the same battle. But perhaps even more important than the musical's success was what it represented for Neil personally. It showed him that his legacy would continue, that his music would keep reaching new generations, and that his impact on the world extended far beyond his ability to perform on stage. In interviews about the musical, Neil opened up about his journey with Parkinson's in ways that inspired countless people. He talked about acceptance, about learning to make peace with limitations, about finding joy in what you can still do rather than mourning what you've lost. Neil said he only started to process that he had Parkinson's in the last few weeks, Sports Illustrated, before a 2023 interview, years after his initial diagnosis. "Somehow, a calm has moved into the hurricane of my life," he said, "and things have gotten very quiet as this recording studio. And I like it. I find that I like myself better. I'm easier on people. I'm easier on myself. And the beat goes on, and it will go on long after I'm gone." Sports Illustrated. This acceptance didn't come easily or quickly. It was a process, a journey that took years and is probably still ongoing. But the fact that Neil could reach that place of peace, that he could find gratitude for what he's experienced rather than only bitterness about what he's lost, is incredibly powerful. At 84 years old now, Neil Diamond's life looks very different from what it did during his 50 years of touring. He's married to Katie McNeil Diamond, who has been a tremendous source of support throughout his health challenges. They focus on health, creativity, and family, living a quieter life than the whirlwind of constant touring that defined so many decades. Neil has 4 children from previous relationships, and maintaining close bonds with them has become even more important as he's dealt with Parkinson's. Family gatherings, time with grandchildren, the simple joys of being present with the people he loves, these have become the centerpiece of his life. He still engages with music, though in different ways. Singing had been a major part of his life for 50 years, he said at the time, and he still enjoyed doing it at 82 years old. Diamond is now 84. "I feel good," he said. "It's like all the systems in my mind and my body are working as one when I'm singing, and it's a great feeling." PDH, he makes occasional public appearances at special events. In 2024, he performed Sweet Caroline at a Boston Red Sox game, joining the crowd in the tradition of singing his iconic song during the 8th inning. The stadium erupted when he appeared, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house as this legend shared his music one more time. In October 2025, at 84 years old, Neil made another appearance, this time at the 39th Annual Carousel Ball in Denver. "I'm still coming back for more," said the 84-year-old hitmaker Boxrec, who performed Sweet Caroline alongside singer-guitarist Nick Fradiani. Before the performance, he received an Inspirational Lifetime Achievement Award for his work with the Children's Diabetes Foundation. "I've been through it all now, and I'm still coming back for more," Diamond said. "I remember being a 15-year-old in Brooklyn and dreaming of a day like this." Boxrec. These rare performances are bittersweet for fans. On one hand, it's incredibly moving to see Neil Diamond still sharing his music, still connecting with audiences, still bringing joy through his songs. On the other hand, it's clear that performing takes a tremendous effort now, that what once came naturally now requires immense concentration and energy. The impact of Parkinson's on Neil's physical abilities is significant. The disease affects movement and coordination in ways that make performing extremely challenging. Walking becomes more difficult, fine motor control decreases, balance becomes unreliable. For someone who spent 50 years moving dynamically across stages, commanding attention through physical presence as well as voice, these limitations are profound. But here's what's remarkable about Neil Diamond's journey with Parkinson's. He has refused to let the disease define him. Yes, it has changed his life dramatically. Yes, it has taken away his ability to do the thing he loved most, performing live for audiences. Yes, it will continue to progress and create more challenges. But Neil has chosen to focus on gratitude rather than bitterness, on what remains rather than what's been lost, on continuing to find purpose and meaning in the years he has left. Let me ask you a question I want you to answer in the comments. Have you or someone you love faced a chronic illness that changed everything? How did you find the strength to keep going? Share your story, because I think we can learn from each other's experiences. Neil's openness about his Parkinson's diagnosis has had an impact that extends far beyond his personal situation. By speaking publicly about the disease, by showing vulnerability while also showing strength, he has given hope and inspiration to countless people facing their own health battles. Parkinson's disease affects approximately 1 million people in the United States and 10 million people worldwide. It's the second most common neurodegenerative disorder after Alzheimer's disease. Most people are diagnosed after age 60. Though younger onset Parkinson's can occur, the disease is progressive, meaning symptoms gradually worsen over time. It primarily affects movement, causing tremors, stiffness, slowness of movement, and balance problems. In later stages, it can also affect speech, swallowing, and cognitive function. Currently, there is no cure for Parkinson's disease. Treatment focuses on managing symptoms through medication, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and in some cases, surgical interventions like deep brain stimulation. Research continues, with scientists working to better understand the disease and develop more effective treatments. Neil Diamond's public battle with Parkinson's has helped raise awareness about the disease and the challenges faced by people living with it. The $750,000 raised through the Broadway musical is being used to fund research and provide resources for patients and their families. But beyond the money, Neil's example of living with dignity and grace despite a devastating diagnosis has been invaluable. He has shown that life doesn't end with a Parkinson's diagnosis. It changes, absolutely. It becomes more challenging, without question. But it's still life, still worth living, still capable of containing joy and meaning and connection. Medical experts emphasize that continuing to engage in activities that bring joy is crucial for people with Parkinson's. This can help in maintaining a sense of identity and purpose, which can help manage the challenges of the disease, experts say. Parkinson's disease can lead to decreased movement and stiffness, so staying active physically can help maintain motor skills as well as decrease fatigue. Pep.ph. Neil's continued involvement with music, even in limited ways, exemplifies this principle. Singing activates multiple systems in the brain and body, providing both physical and emotional benefits that can help slow the progression of symptoms. The legacy of Neil Diamond extends far beyond his diagnosis and retirement. He is one of the best-selling artists of all time, with over 130 million records sold worldwide. He has had 38 top 40 singles and 16 top 10 albums. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1984 and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2011. He received the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2018 and the Kennedy Center Honors for Lifetime Artistic Achievements. But numbers and awards don't capture what Neil Diamond really means to the millions of people whose lives have been touched by his music. His songs have been the soundtrack to countless weddings, first dances, road trips, celebrations, and quiet moments of reflection. Sweet Caroline has become more than just a song. It's a cultural phenomenon that brings people together across generations and backgrounds. When it plays at Fenway Park or any sporting event, thousands of people sing along with genuine joy. And in that moment, they're all connected through Neil's music. His songs have provided comfort during difficult times, joy during celebrations, and companionship during lonely moments. They've helped people fall in love, get through heartbreak, remember lost loved ones, and celebrate new beginnings. That's the true measure of an artist's impact, not the awards or sales figures, but the ways their work becomes woven into the fabric of people's lives. As Neil Diamond enters what will likely be the final chapter of his life, dealing with the progression of Parkinson's disease and the natural challenges of aging, his place in music history is secure. But more importantly, his example of how to face adversity with grace, how to accept limitations without giving up, and how to find peace in changed circumstances will continue to inspire people long after he's gone. In recent years, Neil has reflected on his life and career with a perspective that only comes from facing your own mortality. "I've had a pretty amazing life, it's true," he said. "And the thing was, I wasn't always able to look back on it and be comfortable with it, smile, feel that I was worth it." World Boxing News. But Parkinson's paradoxically helped him gain that perspective. "Well, I can't really fight this thing, so I had to accept it, this Parkinson's disease," he explained. "There's no cure. There's no getting away from it. You can't just say, 'Okay, enough already, let's get back to life.' It doesn't work like that. But I've come to accept what limitations I have, and still have great days. I just have to take life as it comes to me, enjoy it, be thankful that I've had it, especially having the life that I've had." World Boxing News. This acceptance, this ability to be grateful for what was, rather than bitter about what's been lost, is perhaps the greatest lesson Neil Diamond has to teach us. We all face limitations eventually. We all lose abilities that we once took for granted. We all have to say goodbye to versions of ourselves that can no longer exist. How we handle those losses, how we adapt to changed circumstances, how we find meaning and purpose when the life we planned is no longer possible, that's what defines us. Neil Diamond spent 50 years on stages around the world, bringing joy to millions of people through his performances. Now, in his 80s and dealing with Parkinson's disease, he's teaching a different but equally important lesson. He's teaching us about grace in the face of loss, about acceptance without surrender, about finding peace when the hurricane finally quiets. The Broadway musical about his life will continue to introduce his music to new generations. His recordings will continue to be played and loved. Sweet Caroline will continue to unite crowds in joyful sing-alongs. But beyond all of that, Neil Diamond's final act, his journey with Parkinson's, and his honest sharing of that journey, will continue to inspire people facing their own battles. At 84, Neil Diamond has said goodbye to the stage, but he hasn't said goodbye to life, to music, to finding joy in small moments, to being present with the people he loves. He's shown us that retirement from performing doesn't mean retirement from living, and that limitations don't have to define you even when they change everything. Now let me ask you one more question for the comments. What's your favorite Neil Diamond song and why? What memory do you have associated with his music? Share your story, because I think the comments will become a beautiful tribute to the impact he's had on all of our lives. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of why Neil Diamond's music has been so important to so many people, if it inspired you to think differently about facing challenges in your own life, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories about the legends who shaped our culture and the lessons they teach us. Thank you for watching until the end. Remember that saying goodbye to one chapter doesn't mean the story is over. Sometimes the most beautiful parts of our lives come when we learn to accept what is rather than mourning what was. Neil Diamond taught us that through his music for 50 years, and he's still teaching us that lesson now through his grace and courage in facing Parkinson's disease. Until next time, keep finding joy in the music, keep being grateful for the moments you have, and remember that true legends never really leave us. Their impact continues long after they've taken their final bow.